And as you may know, ANU has experienced these drawdowns in the past, during which the stock has sort of caught up with or consolidated its recent performances, and then there has been a parabolic move. Do you believe that we are currently going through one of these phases where the stock is sort of consolidating before rising on the heels of the next major catalyst? That is our opinion, and I believe that as more people look at the demand trajectory for the next 69 months as well as the October quarter, in the end, order flow is what's happening with yields in Blackgo, which we believe could reach tens of billions in total. You begin to examine a stock that, in my opinion, is not expensive because I don't look at a name and say, oh, it's gone from X to I, that's CR, but instead, I look at the numbers. You essentially had 1.70 cents of earnings power, and now you'll have $56, so it's also related to the numbers. And it's also as though you piece together what Jensen is discussing and what the hyperscalers are discussing, Nvidia, Amazon, Google. Have a look at what's happening in Asia with regard to chips, as it's somewhat different from anything we've seen in the past 30 years. Then, consider potential use cases. Friend Anders' assistants now, take a look at Oracle. I'm not saying it's a straight line, but it is the start of $1 trillion in AI capital return. One thing I would like to know is that institutional investors frequently mention this, so they look at Cisco's late 90s chart and then look at Nvidia's current chart, and they realize that they are similar. I covered tech late at night, and you covered tech too, Tom. You know, 90% of Cisco's clients back then were essentially startups with poorly funded business models. Many of those companies are looking for customers today. I mean, big tech has cash on hand of over $1 trillion. And then look at this is a 95 call at 96 moment. Not a 99 movement in terms of T-bubble, which is a great point. What's happening from an enterprise perspective in terms of where these dollars are coming from? I'm just saying, like, I'm just not a believer where you can just throw a chart up. I get the narrative. But that's why that's an important issue after all, as Cisco wasn't selling $120,000 chip either. Instead, they were selling devices at far lower unit costs. Additionally, consider the users who left, moved here, and even went to Nvidia, citing the concentration risk. Microsoft's 44% is that M for the thousands of enterprises that eventually purchase the chips. Microsoft acts as a hyperscaler in the middle. It's not Microsoft, but it's not like that's a concentration risk, so I'm just saying it's like you're gonna go. And of course, the Doge, I mean, that's like right on cue, like a bad Netflix show, or something, you know what I mean, like after that day, they get a Subin, even though it seems like it didn't even happen. But we're in one of those modes, right? Like just in terms of like nervousness, September turns, and in you it's going to like you've talked about buckle the seat bell. But I believe hack is much higher the Southeast 31st than is today. And that's why I think we head toward highs despite some of the jitters macro Fed job reports, whatever you want to talk about. Yeah, what you where did those rumors start, by the way, for the Dodge for Nvidia? Like, because I saw press that boom, I think there was like there was an article or something like that that came out. And but the ironic thing is, like, if they got the Sabina, it doesn't just take a step back. Google's in a trial next week versus Jet. Like, we are just in one of those moods. Big tech bullseye, it's back strong, have gotten stronger. Nvidia is just part of the club along with Apple, Amazon, Google, right? I know there's like you're still talking about even if they get a super, they're going through a process that obviously, but that's the long process, right, in terms of you from an antitrust perspective. Yeah, got it, great. Well, maybe I want to zoom out a little bit more. And sort of touch upon when we sat down 9 months ago and had this webinar, you talked about a few things that you really liked as sort of your themes. You liked AI, obviously, and you like the software players that are involved with AI, including names like Paler Etz, and you like cybersecurity and the importance of cybersecurity. And I guess 9 months later, now that we're in September, would love to get your take on just your latest updates on sort of what important themes and how it's changed the last 9 months. Yeah, I think I think that the themes are there, and probably, maybe like the demand even accelerated more than we expected, especially when it comes to the use cases. I think that was something that we were not expecting, use cases to just blow up in a good. I like the way we're seeing. As for where we are now, from an overall demand perspective, we probably thought we'd be here in January or February. So maybe it's about 6 months ahead of where we expect it to be. I believe the models have just reached a point where you're now seeing companies not just ready to spend, but the use keyed across financials, energy, healthcare. And that's really the key, that's been the fuel that's actually accelerated this whole AI revolution. I think names like Pal Anders Service, now those are really names that have been really put on the radar. Because that Asian, I think on the other side, maybe what we didn't anticipate on the negative, is when you look at names like Salesforce and others, like how I was really going to disrupt sales cycles in software, even though it's a huge catalyst for the next 12-18 months. Actually think in the near term, it's almost a disruptor of sales cycles. Yeah, makes sense, so you know. And I think, but it goes back to the reason I always talk about the internet, we are going to go through periods there are speed bumps, and I was we're going to go to periods where it's things might overshoot, people might overreact, negative, positive. But that's why the reason it's my second Asia trip in the last month. It's you don't find ad revolution in a spreadsheet, you don't find the 154 of an office building in New York ors. And I think it just come down to demand, and what we're seeing, and I think you come away from me as you be here in the next 2 weeks, that speaks to the broader demand. Yep, that's right. And I guess one of the stocks that did catch investors by surprise this year, because of a misstep the company made, is CrowdStrike, and would just love your take on, well, one think it's been impressive that they retained so many customers. But I guess your conviction levels and your thoughts on CrowdStrike. Yeah, I mean historical black eye for cyber secure and obviously for Crouch. I think George would say the same thing, but it was in a bad software update that basically we will talk about for years. And I think will probably change the way software updates happen. And I think that's why it was so bad for CrowdStrike. I think what's shocking in a good way is look, as soon as that happened, over the next week Conan, we're talking to customers, integrator disruption, trying to understand our C is going to switch what happens to sales cycles, about it was really 3-4% of sales cycles got disrupted. You look at the quarter for CrowdStrike, much better than anyone could have thought if you go back 2-3 months earlier.